name is Mike Tellerino. I am the CEO of K9 for Veterans. We're here with Brian and Alex to discuss. Recently, there was four suicides at the VA, where the veterans walked into the VA and committed suicide right at the VA. It's something that I can't even believe happened. I mean, it's a tragedy beyond belief. I just don't understand how we allow this to happen. We've got 22 veterans a day committing suicide. If you don't know what the problem is, you can't fix it. But if you know what the problem is and it's still not fixed, there's something really wrong here. Tonight we're going to discuss the legal point of view of what the family's rights are that for a veteran that commits suicide at the VA. Alex, if I was to walk into the VA and I was to commit suicide, my family members, what can they do?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. But to answer your question, the first thing that you need to do is probably contact an attorney and figure out what exactly went wrong. Mm-hmm. So if someone's committing suicide in the VA in a hospital,
right.
Perhaps somebody did something wrong here. Maybe there was something wrong with the treatment. Maybe the treatment wasn't up to a standard of care. But you'd probably have to talk to an attorney. Obviously, maybe interview the people closest to them, their doctors, their friends. The people in the hospital with them, try to figure out what exactly went wrong here. The bottom line is, whatever went wrong, you need to find out what it was, not just for legal purposes, but for yourself, probably for closure.
So, but are there legal remedies for the family of a veteran who walks into the VA and commits suicide?
I mean, there are certainly remedies, but you'd have to first establish liability. Mm-hmm. You're not going to get liability without some kind of proof of negligence. So you need to understand that there are instances in which a hospital can do everything right in treatment,
sure,
and there be no liability because things still ended up wrong. Okay, but what you have to find out is, did the hospital do something wrong? Is there something where the hospital maybe didn't act up to the standard of care? Were they negligent in some way, shape, or form? And is that the cause of that person walking into the hospital and killing themselves?
There's a side note here. As reported by the Military Times in December 2018, Marine Colonel Jim Turner, 55, put on his uniform and drove to the Bay Pines Department of Veteran Affairs and shot himself right outside the medical center. Investigators discovered a note next to his body. This is what his note said. I bet if you look at the 22 suicides a day, you will see the VA screwed up in 90% of the cases. Is that sad?
That is very sad.
It's quite an alarming number and percentage too. Did the guys come in and ask for help, and were they denied care, or were they sent somewhere else, or were they given like loop arounds, or were they sent in circles trying to find different providers and things like that? So where's the backup, or where's the barriers to care? Like what kind of?
You're a veteran, a Marine veteran.
Yep.
Hoorah! You've been diagnosed with PTSD. Yep. When you hear something like this, what does it do? How does it make you feel?
I just kind of wonder where everything went wrong for that individual, or for that, for that whole healthcare system. Like what happened? Where did where were the miscommunications, misleads, or how did it fall through the cracks that somebody was able to not get help? And that's the frustrating part.
When I first read that article on the internet, and it was 3 veterans. Now there's 4 veterans that did it. I was just taken back by it. I thought, how could this happen?
Right.
And one of the questions that came up that we discovered on our last show was, and Alex, you were there for the show, veterans that are committed for any length of time, is their FOID card in jeopardy? Is that why maybe some of these guys aren't going for help?
It certainly could be. And any reason why someone, if someone calls for any reason and says that you may be unstable, on an emergency basis,
Right.
your gun could be taken away. Now,
So they could just walk in your house and take your gun?
I mean, basically, I mean, they can take away your gun, subject to obviously intrusion law on the Fourth Amendment, but they can take your gun on an emergency basis until a judge gives you a hearing on it. And then, a judge will make a determination whether or not you are stable to continue to have that firearm. Now, a lot of people are refusing to seek help because they don't want to put their firearm
And that's my
in
next
jeopardy.
question.
But at some point, we have to start looking around and weighing the options and determining, what's more important here. Getting people help.
Right, or their FOID card.
Right, or their FOID card.
And really, that's, if you don't mind me jumping in.
Sure.
No. That's one of the main reasons for me personally when I was getting out. I sat down with the DAV representative when I was getting discharged, and I said, do you want to put PTSD on your claim? I said no, because I was thinking I want to go home and I'm going to try to be a cop or a fireman. They're going to find out I have PTSD.
Do you think that's a deterrent for a lot of guys?
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
100%. That is
You think
probably
it's-
the number one deterrent.
So you think if these guys are coming home and they have the option of being designated for PTSD or not, that even though they need the help, they won't seek it because they're afraid of that designation.
Right.
They'll lose their FOID card or lose other
Right,
privileges.
They're gonna lose opportunities.
Or
based-
even, yeah.
Based,
Right.
they're not going to be able to become a fireman because they're going to, people are going to think they're a loose cannon, or, there's a stigma that comes with PTSD that people don't really understand what the actual diagnosis is. So it's not, there's different levels of PTSD. So, you can, the very simplest definition of PTSD is any traumatic event where you have symptoms that last longer than 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
The irritability, the sleeplessness, things that don't, intrusive thoughts. If that lasts longer than 6 months, then it's considered PTSD. If before that 6 month period, it's just a normal stress response, and over time it's supposed to taper away. Now, veterans and everything else that we see, things get, they last a long time. There's Vietnam veterans that after they retired, now they're starting to, because their mind's not focused on anything else, now they're starting to have flashbacks, now they're starting to have dreams,
Right.
now they're starting to have intrusive thoughts. And so those guys too need to realize that they need help.
Alex, what could be done about that? If that's the stigma, one that everybody's afraid of getting attached to their name because of the PTSD and take a chance on losing their FOID card, what could we do? What can anybody do to change that? Do we have to write our congressmen, our senators? How do we change that?
Yeah, I think what
How
it
do we
comes
make
down
that
to,
not happen anymore?
what it comes down to is we have to take a serious look at what our legislation is and determine, at what cost do we want to prevent these people from getting help.
And it is preventing them from going for help.
Right, and so what needs to happen is there needs to be some kind of discretionary basis where just because someone is listed as PTSD, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to lose their rights to protect themselves.
Right.
Let's say you go in to get treatment for PTSD. Well, now I lose my ability to have my firearm and whatever else that comes along with that. I can't get a job as a fireman. I can't get a job as a police officer. If I want to do those things, I'm basically being punished
Right.
for my honesty and going out and seeking help.
So then it is preventing them from getting help.
And so and think about the inverse consequences of that. Now you have people who are not getting treatment going out and seeking out those jobs and positions where that PTSD could
Right.
come in and cause some kind of traumatic
Irreparable
outburst.
harm.
Right, at the wrong possible time.
Right.
So, would you rather have a police officer who has PTSD but has it under control? Or would you rather have one who didn't put it down, doesn't have it under control, and then now it goes terribly wrong at the wrong time because they're not being helped?
Brian, you served in combat.
Yeah.
Okay, you've seen things that probably you wouldn't care to repeat. When you come home, the adjustment to civilian life, I'm sure it was a transformation that was pretty hard to do.
Yeah.
Okay, and you came home, when did you realize that you had your PTSD?
I was doing a school project I was in nursing school actually, and I was doing my clinicals, and we were in the mental health clinical, and we got to PTSD, and I'm reading so there's the DSM or DSV 6 has diagnostic criteria for mental health, and I read the diagnostic criteria for PTSD, and I'm okay, all right, I have that, all right, maybe I have that, and I was like, okay, all right, something's not right here,
Right.
and then my wife had done numerous tons of research on it, and kind of pushed me in the direction of going to the Orland Park Vet Center, which if anybody listening out there that wants to seek help, I'd go to the vet centers because they do some good work. But I actually went in the vet center, and I kind of walked in there, and the guy asked me like, "So what are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm just checking it out." He's like, "All right, sit down." I'm like, "No, it's okay." He's like, "How about we sit down and let me go get one of the counselors." And just talking about it makes a big difference. Just admitting that, hey, maybe I could go talk to somebody. And
Okay, but if you had to make a decision right now, today, okay, acknowledge that I have PTSD and get a FOID card, or get a job as an officer or a fireman.
Well, the thing is, they're not gonna. The stigma is that you can't get a job as a police officer or fireman. You absolutely can.
Oh, no, we have police officers in our program and first responder firefighters that have PTSD and that are actively on the job.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. When I was in the military.
But maybe this is for Alex, I don't know. Are these guys are they subjected to losing their job or their FOID card because they're being treated for PTSD?
I'm sorry, I don't know.
If you're an active police officer, or an active firefighter, and you're being treated for PTSD, is that enough can they fire you for that? Could they take away your FOID card, which would be your job as a police officer?
I mean, a lot of police departments would certainly look into it because, like everyone else, they're worried about escaping liability. So if, let's say something happens while you're on the job, and then it comes out that the police officer was suffering from PTSD, that's going to be a pressing point for attorneys who are looking to make a case, and maybe they're making a mountain out of a molehill, maybe not.
Right.
But that's where the issue comes in. So, what I'm not understanding here is why do we want to discourage people from getting treatment? Because there are people who can live very effective and functional lives with PTSD, but the key is getting help. And if you're creating incentives to make people not want to get help, then that's a problem.
Right.
That's the ultimate barrier to getting help is the punishment of not having the free choice to do what you want when you get out. Because I made a conscious choice while I was in to not put it on my record because I didn't know what the consequences were going forward. I got out in 2008.
Right.
So PTSD was new.
Right.
Like they started talking about it more. People had a little bit more awareness of what it was. It wasn't new. It's been around forever, but the idea of it, the diagnosis.
So, Alex, you're saying that if I'm a police officer or a first responder or a nurse, and something happens to a patient or someone that's under my care, and it was determined later on or found out that I had PTSD, could they bring a case while he shouldn't have been employed there?
Well, I mean, it's fact specific, but again, it determines it's based on whether or not you were capable of doing that, and it's fact specific to everyone. So if you're getting treatment, it's under control. A doctor believes that it's under control enough where you can have a high stress job, then sure, that's one thing. If it's not under control, then that's another thing entirely. But I can bet you that any attorney who comes across that nugget of information that someone has PTSD, they're probably not
Somehow
gonna
gonna manipulate
right. They're
that
going
into-
to take that, even if that person has it under control, and even if the PTSD had nothing to do with it, that information will be manipulated and twisted and be blamed as the cause for
Right,
something that
that's
happened.
the point
right?
I was trying to make.
Right.
Brian, you know veterans who committed suicide?
Yep. In fact, actually, this morning I found out there was another guy in my old unit. I didn't know him, but he had committed suicide. I think over the weekend. They just put it on our. We have a battalion Facebook page, and they put the in memorandum on the Facebook page. But,
How do you feel with that when you see that? Does it make you worry?
yeah, I mean, every time this happens, we put the guys on the battalion web page and the platoon web page go out and do a buddy check, but
All right.
it shouldn't have to be. We should be able to make sure everybody's okay before this happens. It
What do
shouldn't take
you
months.
think the biggest problem is with PTSD and not getting help? What would you recommend as basic treatment for someone with PTSD through the VA or any organization?
Well, first you got to admit that you need help. You
can't
gotta
get-
you gotta have some identifying. So if somebody's telling you that you should probably talk to somebody, talking to somebody, it's not gonna hurt you. I mean, it's not gonna you're not taking one of the other barriers I know for guys is they hear the horror stories about going to the doctor and they get all these medicines and now I feel like a zombie. Okay, well then it's your right as a patient to not take medicine.
Yeah,
If
but
you
once
don't-
you're on so many meds, you don't even realize.
Well, that's the thing.
Are you coherent enough to realize what you're doing?
Well, you got to figure out what works for you. Like if you start out slow, you got to start out slow, and you start out admitting that hey, maybe I should go talk to somebody.
I don't know if barbiturates are the answer though.
Oh, I don't think barbiturates. No, there's numerous different classes of medicines that are prescribed well before barbiturates anymore. That's not a standard
Well,
of care.
and I don't think I'm not a doctor, but I don't think throwing medicine at the situation.
I don't
is the
think
only
that's the answer either.
There's a human component here
Right.
too. We're talking to people.
Right.
Getting psychological treatment is a big factor here too. So if you're just worried about getting drugged up, there are alternative means of treatment.
Sure. The vet centers, they don't have anybody at the vet center that provides medications. They're all counselors. In fact, the guy that I see, his name's Melvin. He's a
Doesn't that go
social-
further than?
Absolutely.
I mean, don't you need to get to the root cause of the problem before
Sure.
you could, treat it? I mean,
Yeah. The thing with the vet center, you talk to somebody. They're social workers or mental health providers that are readjustment counselors. They're not psychiatrists. They're not psychologists. They're not gonna throw medicine at you. Their methods of trying to help you deal with things are non-pharmacological. So, we've tried because I've done a couple different things, and I let Melvin, if he's like, hey, I read this new thing, you want to try it? Sure, yeah, let's try it. There's rapid eye movement things where you talk about, you kind of zone yourself into something, you think about some of the traumas that you've been exposed to, and then you kind of talk about it. And in theory, it's supposed to lessen the how you feel about it long term. It's supposed to desensitize you to the traumas and get you to open up and talk about it.
right.
And really, the honest to God truth is, if you talk about it, you're gonna feel better. You're gonna get that weight off your chest. So just talking to somebody, even if it's a buddy, going to one of the organizations, going to K9s. I've tried. There's a Warriors hockey team in Chicago.
Right.
There's all sorts of different veterans organizations that you can go and just talk to somebody.
I think I think PTSD is just really so misunderstood.
Sure.
I think
absolutely.
a lot of people that are ignorant of it, they're afraid of it.
Because they don't know what it is.
They don't understand it. And I think that's one of the reasons why we need to talk about it as much as we can to open up the channel of communication so people become aware of what PTSD is, and it's nothing to be afraid of.
Right.
And the more people who understand it, more people will be able to help with the situation instead of being just totally ignorant of it and say, well, I don't want to talk about it.
Sure, absolutely, I agree 100%. I mean, look at, for example, depression. 20, 30 years ago, where if you had depression, you had to live in silence. You had to bear that on your own. But because, information on the subject has advanced so much, now it's a lot more understood by the general population.
Right.
And it's something that the general population is a little bit more expecting or accepting of. That was not the case, and I think with PTSD, we kind of need to make that same kind of progress
Right.
and have the general population kind of understand that better.
Sure.
Because right now people are like at the stage where we were with depression when it was not understood that depression was a sickness. It was like, hey, stop being sad, snap out of it.
Well, PTSD goes back as far as, as far as Civil War, but we just didn't understand
Well,
what
they
it
called
was.
it
We just,
shell shock.
right, we just didn't have a label for it.
Right.
But it's always affected, largely a very segmented proportion of the population, which is our troops. And for the average person who is not involved with people like that, they have no
Conception
experience.
of what it was.
They don't have any chance to experience dealing with it. Unless you are directly involved with somebody who is impacted by it, you do not know or understand what the day-to-day
Right.
consequences of that is.
Brian, I want to thank you for coming up
Yeah,
today.
no problem, anytime.
And,
nice meeting you.
like I said, you're a veteran, you're a nurse, you work in a hospital, you function every day.
Yeah, it's
Um,
it's not easy. You can do it though.
Oh,
you just
you're
have to.
living
You
proof
just
of
have
it.
to. You have to. And you can do everything you want to do. You just have to. Even when I said I was getting a service dog, one of the managers that I worked with, she goes, "Oh, you're training it for somebody?"
No, this is
No.
mine.
Yeah, so
You know?
let me ask you about that. So now at the hospital, are they all fully aware of your
Oh, sure.
condition? And do you have any issues with it?
Nobody has any problem with it.
Okay.
There's
It's great.
Yeah, I mean, as long as the thing is, if you just open up and say, look, there's certain things that bother me.
How do you like your
generally.
dog?
Dog's great. Couldn't be happier. Yeah, if you just open up and say, listen, these certain things bother me, or I prefer to sit, looking at the door with my back to here.
Right.
Nobody's really gonna question you on it. Just it's okay to ask for a little bit of help every now and again.
Alex, Michael, why don't you tell who you're with and the number they can reach you at if they have any questions?
Sure, absolutely. I'm an attorney. My office is Michael Diettinger and Associates. My name is Alexander Michael. Our office phone number is 708-923-0368. Again, 708-923-0368. We're based out of Palos Heights. If anyone has any legal questions or anything that you want to discuss on this kind of subject or any other legal questions, you can give us a call at that number.
Alex is also an executive director of K9 for Veterans. He was just welcome on board
Thank you.
a few months
It's
ago.
been an honor.
And in closing, again, I'd like to thank Alex and Brian for being here tonight. And also to remind everyone that we have a memorial called the Forgotten Warrior Memorial in Shanahan State Park on May 11th. It's to honor our veterans who lost that battle to PTSD and committed suicide. It's a way that we can honor their memory with their families and hope find some closure for them. So you can go to our website to get more information. It's the letter K, the number 9, the letter S, the letter D, K9sd.org, and find out more about PTSD and what you could do to help. And if you know someone has PTSD, call them, check in on them, talk to them, make sure if they're having an issue that they know there's someone that's going to listen to them and talk to them. Am I right?
Yep.
And
That's
more
all it takes.
importantly, if you know someone who you think might have PTSD, encourage them to
To
seek
get help.
Yeah.
Yeah, we work with the Road Home program out of Rush University. It's an amazing program, it really is. They're on the cutting edge of PTSD, and what they do is amazing for our veterans that are in that program. So, and I don't care where you go. If you go and you need help, go get help. Acknowledge that you have.
You could even
PTSD.
start with somebody, somebody that either is in treatment or not, or just a buddy of yours from your old unit. Just reach out. That's all you got to do.
Talk.
Yeah.
And keep the conversation going about PTSD and let everybody know that it's nothing that anybody needs to be afraid of. The more we can talk about it, the more we can open communications and inform people what it's about, the better off we're going to be. So thank you. Brian and Alex for being my
Thank you
guests
for having
tonight.
us.
Thanks a
And we
lot.
look forward to seeing you, our audience again. Thank you.